And welcome to coverage of Grand Prix Atlantic City. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe in the booth with Nate Price, and we are off to the races. It looks like Ari Lax started off with the Rakdos Cackler. He's attacking with that and the Ash Zealot that he cast this turn, and Josh Utter-Leighton is just on an Invisible Stalker, so right now it looks like Ari Lax is in the driver's seat to take down game one, but we've seen Josh Utter-Leighton's deck is absolutely explosive, dealing huge chunks of damage in one turn. So this is far from over, although Josh does look like he's under a ton of pressure.
Yeah, it's
sitting at 12, although Ari played nothing for the turn. You expect to see a burn spell out of Ari here?
Every time that we've seen a mono-red player do nothing on turn 3, if they didn't have a burn spell, which doesn't happen very often, it's because they've got multiple Heralders in their hand.
Yeah, that's right.
So I would be much more apt to guess that than anything else.
All right, so let's see what Josh wants to do here. I see he's got, I believe, an Ethereal Armor in his hand, if not two. He's going to play Abundant Growth to draw a card. He's going to draw a Forest. He's going to play a Forest tapped. He's going to make an Avacyn's Pilgrim. And he's going to play Ethereal Armor. It's going to give the Invisible Stalker +2/+2.
Avacyn's Pilgrim, also known as Roadblock.
Yeah, speed bump.
Temporary. Speed bump is a much better name. Yes, you're right. Maybe pothole.
Yeah, if that. All right, so it looks like Ari's lining up a Searing Spear, and he's just going to spear Josh. He just says, spear you, bring you down to 9. Is this going to be a Hellrider?
Yeah.
Hellrider.
Oh, and he's got a Thunderbolt to back it up.
Attack with everything. 3 triggers. Drop Josh Utter-Leighton down to 6. Josh is going to block the Hellrider, and he's deciding if he wants to block another creature here.
3/3 first striker right there is going to at least take care of that. Oh, man. Ari has a Thundermaw Hellkite in his hand, too.
Yeah, and I bet you Josh is sensing this, although it doesn't look like there's a whole lot he can do about it. As getting in for 20 is really tough for Josh's deck. He can get in for a ton.
Yeah.
But 20 is pretty difficult. He passes. So we hear Ari ask, can I die this turn? It does seem highly unlikely.
No. So you need 3 armors, or is it?
Armor.
He still needs to have double strike for that, though, right? 1, 2, 3 armors would be 8. All right, it's just going to be a Geist of St. Traff, and he's going to pass the turn. Does Ari have the land? He has a Brimstone Volley in his hand.
And that'll do it.
That is going to do it.
Dies in combat.
Dies in combat, Brimstone Volley to your face, and Josh Utter-Leighton falls in the first game here. This is why we play out of 3, though. Ari Lax going to his sideboard. So is Josh Utter-Leighton, and this is just a good old-fashioned slugfest. You know, you talked about it before, Nate. These decks just race each other.
They do. Like
you get a warning
that.
for slow.
I don't think that there's been a situation that I can remember. I mean, this is just a textbook example of how important seeding is going into the top 8, because Ari Lax is in second, Josh Utter-Leighton is in third, which means that Ari Lax gets to play first. And in a matchup that is about sprinting, getting to take that first step is, a significant advantage here. Things get a little weird after the sideboarding, though. I mean, there are definitely cards that get to come in that make it a better matchup for Josh Utter-Leighton. Like the 2 Feelings of Dread that he's got. Wolfear Avenger is another great sideboard card to bring in. He's got 4 Strangleroot Geist that I think we saw come in this matchup earlier. So things get better for him in game 2, not to mention the fact that he has the tempo control on his side too. But Ari Lax's deck that's exactly what it does right there. It's got so many removal spells in the deck that what normally would be a detriment to him, like they're all burn spells, so they just finish things.
Yeah, so, Josh has the ability. It's funny because they actually race on a different axis, right? Like, we'll see Ari basically attacking every turn. And even though it doesn't look like Josh Utter-Leighton is at the moment racing, I mean, at that time he was clearly on the defensive just because he was facing so much pressure. Really a nut draw from Ari Lax. But Josh actually is often in that position racing, as he'll just select one turn where he can set up a situation where he won't die on the crackback or is unlikely to die. He'll attack, and then the next turn he will represent lethal damage. So it's kind of an interesting thing to watch, because Josh will probably sit back for a little while, and then all of a sudden you'll see him jump out of the gates and hit a couple of times.
Yeah.
But with all the while building to that game plan. For those of you that just got up and had a sandwich, you already missed a game.
Sorry.
Ari Lax came out of the gates very, very quickly with a Rakdos Cackler into an Ash Zealot. He then had a Searing Spear to the face on turn 3, followed up by a Hell Rider, which got killed, and then a Morbid Brimstone Volley finished off Josh Utter-Leyden, and that was it.
Do the math. That's 21.
It was insane.
Yep.
Yeah, it was a super fast game. And Josh had a reasonable draw and had a reasonable threat and even had a first. I mean, Ari was able to just run his Hell Rider into Josh's first striking 3-3 and just not even care.
Yep. That's so true. I mean, the game starts the other direction. If Josh is the one who's on the play that game, Josh has at least 4 extra life and gives him an ability to attack somewhere in there, possibly be at a high enough life total to stabilize. I mean, I don't know if you could beat that draw from Ari, though. Like, at least not with the cards that Utter-Leyden showed.
Yeah.
Looking at this list, Ari doesn't have much in his sideboard for this matchup. He's got a couple Archwing Dragons that probably see play. He has a Pillar of Flame that might make it in just to provide a little extra burn to the face. And I mean, Mizium Mortars maybe, but I mean, I don't think he's got anything that he really cares to take out. Like, if he sides anything out, he's been siding out lands a lot over the course of this weekend.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, I think it's likely.
How come?
What's that?
Why?
You can side him out on the draw. He just doesn't need them as much. Yeah, and on top of that, his deck is really tight. Like, you don't the creatures. Like, can you find a situation where you want to side out one creature over another? It's really in situations when, like, he would want to bring out, like, I mean, you generally don't want to bring out too many removal spells. You got to be careful about that. The Crucibles are really what comes out. Like, if there's something he doesn't actually care, he can pull those 2 Crucibles out and put in, like, 2 Archwing Dragons, and it's just a fine sideboard. He does a lot of upgrading is what it is, like trading out specific cards. Like, he's got 4 Reckless Waves in his sideboard that come in against the control decks.
Oh, yeah.
That he can, put those into his deck and pull out something that is not necessarily as good. Like, the Pyreheart Wolves aren't as amazing. I mean, I guess the Pyreheart Wolves are probably pretty good against those matchups because they usually only have 1 or 2 creatures to defend. But Reckless Wave is just a strict upgrade against those control decks. You have Mizium Mortars, which is just a strict upgrade over like Searing Spears if you're playing against Green-White, because you need to be able to
take out Loxodon Smiters and Restoration Angels.
I'm sorry, yeah, it's an upgrade over Pillar of Flame in those matchups because, yeah, you get to kill the healers and the angels and stuff like that. Smiter goes away too.
All right, players are looking at their hands right now. Josh is going to be the one on the play of this game, so he's deciding if he wants to keep. I see that he has brought in the feeling of dread, which is one of those key cards that can really minimize the effect that, like, a card like Hell Rider has on the board and give Josh just enough time. But it looks like both players are actually taking a mulligan to 6 here, as Ari is as well.
These are 2 decks that can mulligan very well. They each need a couple of pieces, and that's really it. Like, plus Josh has got a lot of, I don't want to say a lot of card drawing in his deck, but he's got every one of his cards.
Curiosities.
Yeah, I mean, Curiosity, Abundant Growth, like,
cantrips, things that get through his deck.
And still do things at the same time, yeah. But all he really needs, he just needs a body to put an enchantment on and, like, a rancor, and the game is afoot. Or it'd be better for him if he got an ethereal armor in that, because giving any of his creatures first strike and at least a 2 power means bad times for the red deck.
Yeah, especially against red, because they're just going to have no way to deal with anything with hexproof. They just can't kill those, right? I mean, he doesn't have Rolling Temblers in here. He doesn't have Bonfire of the Damned.
And those cards don't generally do anything in this matchup anyway, because, like, the toughness of these creatures gets high enough that just
ethereal armor
gets away
pumps
from
the
it.
toughness.
Yeah.
So does Spectral Flight. And even then, Josh Utter-Leyden has access to cards like Celestia Charm, which can pump it out of range as well if Josh wants to play it that way.
Yeah. It's very, very true. I don't know. It's funny to watch these 2 decks go that they're the same deck and yet not.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Magic is always one of those things where, like, matchups like this in particular, I always used to think that they were just boring and dumb. The same way I used to think Control Mirror matchups were boring and dumb. It was like the interactive, like, one versus the other that I always really enjoyed. But the more I've watched these matches over the course of my tenure doing coverage, the more I understand like the intricacies of doing math. Like it seems like this is just a blazing. Like the first game was not the greatest game as far as getting actual things out, but
I mean it was very one-sided.
Exactly.
Arilax was absolutely beating down, but honestly, if he would have missed a drop of some sort, Josh was building up a reasonable rebuttal there, but it's just Ari didn't.
Yeah, exactly. And you get that. I mean, that's what you get. Like you get a lot of the little things that make matches what they are that become more apparent, like things like who gets to go first, like what specific cards they've got in their deck, how they handle the exact situations, how they choose to like hedge the math in the attacks.
Well, and that's the thing about these aggressive decks, especially the mono red, but even more so for Josh's deck in this case, which is that the decisions, you get fewer decisions.
True.
When you play a control deck, you get a lot of options. You can kind of veer and change a little bit, and they can be a little bit more forgiving, where these aggressive decks, especially with the mono red decks, you don't get that kind of luxury. If you make one mistake, it can easily cost you the game.
This is very, very true.
Yeah. There's no cantrips here. There's no, well, then I'll just flashback my think twice instead. It's just, no, you missed 3 damage and you needed it, and that's it.
Yep. I mean,
all right, players are looking at their hands. Let's see what.
2 keeps.
All right, 2 keeps. Josh Utter-Leyton leading off with a land, and there's a Stromkirk Noble, which is pretty strong against Josh's deck. He does have some humans in there. He's also got some Strangleroot Geist and other type of Geists that don't care.
Let's see, we see Strangleroot Geist, we see a Rancor. I thought I saw a Fencing Ace, maybe a Silverblade Paladin in that hand.
Yeah, there's definitely a Silverblade Paladin in there. It's like Josh has a Cavern of Souls, and he's going to name Spirit. And he is just going to attack. He's not going to bother keeping back to block. Again, these decks are racing each other. It might not look like it at all times, but they certainly are. Pillar of Flame's going to take out the Strangleroot Geist and is going to allow Arilax to get in for 1 damage. But it's also going to grow that Stromkirk Noble a bit. Abundant Growth on Cavern of Souls means it can tap for any colored mana now. For anything.
Judge Simon Cooper, the side of
Four spells aren't going to matter. Did he miss a land? Is he missing a land drop?
I think he might be missing this land drop.
This would be pretty critical if it's the case. Yeah, he's got an Avacyn
Okay,
spell.
there it is. Okay, I was hiding it back.
Also got a Hallowed Fountain, so he is still around. Human Monk there, he cannot block, nor would he anyway. It would just be a chump block. Hellion Crucible for Arilax, and he just ships a turn back. All right, this is a big turn for Josh Utter-Leyton. Let's see what he can come up with here.
4 mana.
Ari's keeping a reasonable amount of pressure up, but not nearly anything like we saw in the first game, which just went by so quickly.
Yeah, and now Josh is...
All right, he's going to play a Geist, and he is going to equip it up with an Ethereal Armor. Arilax puts a counter on his Hellion Crucible and draws his card for the turn. It's 4 mana, and it is a Hellrider, but it looks like he just has to attack because he isn't in the position he was last time where he can just suicide his Hellrider in there and just to get in a few extra points of damage, because right now that Geist of St. Traft is a 4/4 with first strike.
Now the question is passed back to Josh.
That's
now
right.
He's got to do the math. How much can Ari deal? Exactly.
Exactly. Also, how much bigger can that Geist get this turn is another question. Well, right now it just got 3/3 bigger, and he's going to pair it up with a Silverblade Paladin and attack.
Lethal. That is
14/18.
Unblocked. That is
2,
lethal.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Correct.
Which is 14 of double strike plus the 4 in the air. That is incredible.
Yeah, we're cool here.
Wow.
Play first.
From the trees.
So Arilax decides not even to bother blocking there. He could block though, right?
Yeah, he could block in. It was one of those things where he could definitely block.
And he would be alive for 1 turn and then just die.
Well, then what's he going to do? Yeah.
Yeah, but like he's mono ready, doesn't have any out. So he says, yeah, we're good here.
Yeah, exactly.
And we're going to move on to the third game.
One drop Hellrider.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like we were saying before, it's interesting because these decks are very much going at each other's throats here. And as we saw, Josh didn't do much damage. You know, he got in with 1 Strangleroot Geist, but that was just because he said, well, if he's going to pillar it anyway, I'd rather just have it die. And then, boom. he hits for 17, 18 damage in one swing, and he was setting up that turn the whole time.
Yep, but I mean the marquee turn for that big game was when he actually got to put the ethereal armor. The ethereal armor in specific is what won him that game because it prevented Ari from getting any sort of meaningful attack in on that turn. And then after the fact, like it's basically what gave him the temporary, brief little respite that he needed in order to set up that massive just bash.
Yeah, it was just one turn, and Ari didn't have a particularly good draw. We saw an amazing draw in the first game from Ari, just endless pressure where he could have a lot of flexibility with his resources. Like I said, he attacked with his Hell Rider into a first striking 3-powered or 4-powered guy just because he wanted to get the triggers.
Yeah.
But this game was much different as Josh Utter-Leyton still had a relatively healthy life total, and Ari had to just sit back and pass the turn back. Again, hexproof plus a big first strike body is really tough for Ari's deck unless Ari has already dealt a significant amount of damage.
Yeah. It's very interesting watching Josh Utter-Leyton's sideboard because it looks to me like some of the sideboard decisions he's making are based on play draw rather than the matchup in particular. Like Strangleroot Geist is acceptable against the red decks, but it's nothing too amazing. So they are running pillars, and it's just going to die. But when you're on the play, it's a hasty creature, and a hasty creature is good. And especially if you can get that hasty creature, I don't know, a ranker. But I think he possibly just sideboarded them out. Now that he's on the draw, it doesn't do nearly as much. I mean, he can 2-for-1, I suppose, if he gets himself in a favorable situation. But there are a lot of cards in green in particular that are much better on one side of the play versus the other. Garruk Relentless is another one of those cards where it's much better when you're on the play than on the draw because you've got what you need in play to kind of give him that tiny bit of support that he needs to stay alive.
John? All right, just getting an update from the side table.
John's up a game, is it?
Jund, yeah.
Jund?
Who?
John Stern, right?
Oh, sorry, yeah, John Stern is up a game. Excuse me.
So you say we lost the Jund.
Yeah, I thought
all of it last round.
That's right. I thought that Rashad said John.
Yeah.
John's up a game. So right now, for those of you that are just tuning in here, we have John Stern up a game versus Brad Nelson on the other tables with auras. And auras in the hands of Josh Utter-Leyton has now equalized versus Ari Lax's mono red here. And they are going to a game 3 to see which one of these two players gets to play in the finals of Grand Prix Atlantic City. So this is a big one.
It's going to be a tough one to call, too, because you have the decided advantage for Ari Lax of going first.
Yeah, which was huge in the first game.
It's absolutely ridiculous, yeah.
It really is massive.
Yeah, but Josh Utter-Leyton gets to side into effectively taking back the play by bringing in Feeling of Dread, which it's the fight of one of those versus the other. Ari, who doesn't have a tremendous amount of sideboard in this matchup, versus Josh, who has just enough to try to negate the tempo advantage gained by being able to play first.
That's right, and Feeling of Dread's a big one. The key for that, though, is that Josh needs to be able to assemble
No, not all.
a clock. Yeah, it doesn't have to be massive. I mean, the bigger the better, but
Actually,
even if it's 6, 7, 8 damage per turn, he can string together Feelings of Dread and swing the tide in his favor firmly.
We saw that happen in a feature match, I believe earlier. It was earlier today or late yesterday when Feeling of Dread was all it was 2 turns, and 2 turns is all he needed.
Yeah, and that's really common. I've noticed for the Auras deck that when they do get the little Voltron assembled, it's usually a 2-turn clock.
Yeah, exactly. There are just so many ways to push it over the top, and I mean, all you got to do. You get in for 9 and 9, which I mean seems like we're making it paltry, but for this deck,
yeah,
9's what? 2 auras.
Yeah, it's not much.
An ethereal armor and a ranker, and then whatever else you set up to that point.
Yeah,
that's actually a good way to put it. You should
love the abundant growth. That's really cute.
But the card's so good. It does so many things in that matchup.
It's a great card. Yeah,
fixes your mana when you're playing cards like Strangleroot Geist and Geist of Saint Trash at the same time. It draws you a card, so it actually just smooths your draw for that reason.
That's right.
And it counts as an aura for etherial armor.
Yeah,
it just does everything.
I think it's a genius little addition there. I love it.
You have 2 cards with Flash.
Whoa. As much as I would like to say that it might deserve one of the top 5 cards of the weekend status, I think if you're going to give it to anything in this deck, you're going to give it to the ethereal armor. That card is just not fair against the creature decks, and it's not fair against the other decks because it just for 1 white mana you get +4/+4 in first strike.
Mm-hmm.
We've been here before together.
Land, yes.
And it stays.
Yeah, exactly. How long has it been since we saw creature enchantments become relevant?
It's rare.
Wait, was it Avacyn Restored?
I mean, that's a block format,
Yeah.
so probably.
Yeah.
We won the match I was watching, wasn't you?
Oh, I think
That's so insane.
Which one did you take second at?
It's just hard for creature enchantments to be of value. I mean, they have to do something magnificent like Eldrazi conscription in order to do something real, and
Which was much more akin to a combo.
exactly
Right.
which is exactly like this is. Yeah. So, I mean, if it doesn't do something grandiose like win the game in 2 turns, the removal that just exists inherently in constructive formats makes them disadvantageous.
Yeah, I remember when we saw it at PT Avacyn Restored, I thought it was innovative and cool, but it also made some amount of sense because that's a very small card pool compared to standard.
Yeah.
And, you might not have the right removal, but this is actually full-on standard. Now, Arielax is going to take a mulligan. That's good news for Josh Utter-Leighton fans out there, although he's still browsing his hand here.
I mean, I lost my third game. Like,
Yeah.
probably should have mulled.
So it's not the sword, sorry.
Once again, for everybody just tuning in, there's a bunch of new people on the stream, and we're in the semifinals here in Atlantic City. We're watching Josh Utter-Leighton versus Arielax. Arielax is on mono red. Josh Utter-Leighton is on
That match, I will
Bant Auras. They call it Aureli. And they're going to go to a game 3 here. Arielax is just mulliganed. In our other match, we have Brad Nelson versus John Stern, and John's at the game over there.
like all these.
Yeah, we have the possibility of seeing an Auras mirror match in the finals.
Which we haven't seen yet on camera.
No, not yet.
That's what I'm talking about. Like that was the hyper.
Not a lot of interaction there, I'm assuming.
No, it's
Kind of who assembles the monster first.
exactly.
Yeah, that's just a guess. There might be a lot more to that matchup than meets the eye, but that's what it seems like from
No,
the
let's
onset.
not make it anything more than it is.
Yeah.
We'll see. But if Ari is able to take this game on the play here, it would mean that the potential exists for him to have to go through 2 consecutive Auras decks in order to take home the trophy. And in both matchups, he would be the first, like the higher seed.
Yeah.
So he would be on the play for both of them.
I don't think it's a terrible matchup for Ari at all. We
No.
saw what he did in the first game. He couldn't quite muster it in the second game, but I think he's got a pretty reasonable matchup here.
Yeah.
And he's got a keep and a turn 1 Rakdos Cackler, and it is going to be unleashed as well. So let's see what Josh can do to combat this. He's got a lot of turn 1 plays in the deck, and here's one right now. It's an Avacyn's Pilgrim. That sets up a lot of turn 2 plays that are pretty powerful for him right now. He is going to say Pillar of Flame. He's going to play a Stone Right, and he is going to pair it. So Josh Utter-Leighton has an empty board, no source of white mana currently. Let's see what he can do about that.
I love how frequently Ari plays with 1, maybe 2 cards in his hand because of the way that his deck operates.
Yeah.
All of his decisions, he has less
he's
decisions
got
about what to play. And
he's got 1 or 2 in his hand right now.
yeah.
All right, so it looks like Josh is going to take 2 from that land. He's going to use the green mana to play an Abundant Growth, and that's going to lead to another Avacyn's Pilgrim. So not a gangbuster start here for Josh Utter-Leighton, but he is committing stuff to the board. And Arielax says, I'm going to attack with both. So does Josh,
Block
is he
the
forced
Stone
to
Right?
block the Stone Right here? It means he could take 5 damage this turn. But it's not going to get any better. He would only take 6 if he doesn't block it. So
Let's see. I mean, I think you block it for a couple of reasons here. Like, you set yourself back, but it also is just tremendous hit to the aggression that Ari's got. And he might hit 4 mana and might have a Hellrider next turn. And not getting rid of it now just adds even more damage.
yeah, I see that Josh has got a Silverblade Paladin in his hand. If he doesn't have another white mana source with which to cast it, he might want to just take this 1 hit and then put it down. Unfortunately for him, the fire breathing effect from Stone Right will be on both creatures, so he's going to take another hit next turn. But I mean, he's only taking 1 more damage this turn if he doesn't block.
This
so
is a tough read too, because
really tough
with Ari attacking and not just straight removing that Pilgrim beforehand.
Yeah,
Josh has got to think that
Does
he might not have a
the
removal
pillar?
spell.
Yeah,
so if
right.
he doesn't have a removal spell, then it becomes more beneficial for him to play the Paladin.
That's right.
And
he's going to
be
play a
ready for better
Lightning Mauler
block.
post-combat after pumping once with fire breathing. So Josh didn't take the full 6 there. He took 4. Josh gets to untap. Let's see what he can come up with. I think he's got an Invisible Stalker in his hand. as well. He's got a little bit more of his more expensive cards. You know, he wants to see the Rankers and the Ethereal Armors especially very good against Ari Lax.
Yeah. Does he have another shock land?
Wow,
He does,
he's going to hit himself again down to 10. He has to hate taking that kind of damage, but he is going to play Silverblade Paladin, pair it up, and he just says go.
Now
So
does
Ari Lax
Ari
needs a
actually have
removal
it?
spell, and you know Josh Layton has him red for not having it, and if he doesn't, Ari Lax just doesn't have an attack this turn.
Yeah.
He just doesn't. Josh would only be taking 2 damage, and it would just be decimating the board. It's another Rakdos Cackler. That can't be what Ari Lax wanted, and he just forced to pass the turn back.
Yep.
That's a Geist of St. Traft off the top for Josh. I see he's also got a Rancor in hand, so can he start to mount an offensive? That's the question.
If nothing else, he could certainly start to build.
He certainly can. Now, you know he's in a precarious spot here, though, because if Ari were to draw a removal spell, he can break up that Soul Bond and enable some pretty nice attacks here, but he's just got to hope that Ari doesn't do that as he plays a Geist of St. Traft. Ari draws a land for the turn and is forced to just pass it back, so Ari just needs that one piece of removal here, and right now it looks like Josh is going to start assembling the monster. He can start throwing Rancors and stuff around.
Yeah.
If he has an Ethereal Armor to put on the Geist of St. Traft, he can put a Rancor on the Silverblade Paladin and get in for a huge hit. He can also just start putting a bunch of auras and
Josh has
such.
He's got to be careful what he enchants here. Like the Geist is a very safe target.
Yes.
But I mean, do you enchant the Silverblade Paladin or do you enchant the Elf? Because I mean, if Ari's going to kill something, he's going to kill either he's going to have to choose between the larger target or the one that's actually giving double strike. And if he kills the Silverblade Paladin, you want the larger creature to stick around behind. So
you mean like if Ari were to draw a removal spell?
Yeah, just draws a
on his
removal
turn?
spell. Exactly.
Okay,
To get it back in.
And that's undoubtedly what Josh is thinking about right now.
Where do I put my goodies?
Again, Ari Lax is at 20, and that looks like a safe life total, but it is not. This is very much a slugfest between these two decks, and we're going to see Josh Layton start to develop a situation where he can just attack really hard. All right, so he's going to put Rancor down. It is going to go on. He's got another Rancor, and here we go. 6 double strike. That's 12 damage, and it's got trample, so blocking doesn't get a whole lot done. Again, Ari Lax looks safe at 20, but he's not.
Yeah, this is almost undoubtedly going to be a shot of 12 to Ari, putting him to the top of his deck.
And he's got an invisible stalker, so Josh is setting up for the win next turn.
Like invisible blocker, just in case. Hexproof blockers.
Hexproof blockers. He's got a 1-1, a 2-2, and a 1-1 first strike. 2 of them have hexproof. Is there a way that Ari can get out of this? It's starting to not look like it, as Josh has undoubtedly lethal on the crackback next turn.
That's it.
And sure enough, he extends the hand. He could have played a Thunder My Hellkite that turn, but it just wouldn't have been enough damage. And Josh Layton advances to the finals here in Atlantic City.
Good luck in the finals, man.
No, I mean, I understand where you're coming from, but like, in the position I am in.
It's not that I think you go ask for advice, just someone might come up and say, hey, how's it going?
Pardon?
Did they board in this? Or
Do you think I'd take that advice? I know what you mean.
Going to game 3?
In your position, I would do the exact
All right,
same
so it
thing.
looks like we're
But in
going to
my
switch
position,
over to the Brad Nelson match as they are going to game 3, just like we saw here. Let's take a
Brad
quick
pulled
look
it
at the
out.
bracket here. Josh Layton, Raptor, has advanced to the finals of this GP with Bant
Oh, that's
auras.
You know he wants this so bad
Oh,
too.
man, totally.
I mean, everyone does. I mean, if Josh and Brad both make the finals here, it is a fight to the death. Like the two of them want this title so bad.
Oh man, Brad Nelson versus Josh Layton in the finals would be amazing. Although John Stern has had an incredible weekend, has certainly earned a spot here, and he finds
definitely.
himself just one game away from the finals here. So we're going to get a chance to watch that actual game, and here it is right now. You see the players are sideboarding.
I'm a little surprised that Brad ended up taking game 2.
Yeah, he must have found a pretty crazy way to do it, because it doesn't look like a pretty good matchup.
It doesn't really. He lost the first game on the play too, I'd imagine. So he came in as the top seed of the Swiss. It's not a particularly amazing matchup for him. Main deck, I guess his sideboard doesn't get that much better either. It adds, he's got removal spells in his deck, but as we've already discussed, like removal spells don't do much. So, yeah. I guess, I mean, his deck does have stuff. Like, his deck does have stuff. I guess it's the best that I can say. So,
His deck has stuff.
I mean, like, the pingers don't do much. I mean, Olivia does. Olivia does work regardless. But Huntmaster, I mean, I would be willing to bet that. Like, I really wonder how that last game went. Like, I bet it came down to Huntmaster and Thragtusk. Like, just bit of life gain and ultimately just getting him with something. Like, Deathrite Shaman's pretty good this matchup, too. I mean, I guess he has an acceptable amount of life gain. It's just life gain without a clock.
Right.
So.
And that doesn't get you anywhere.
No.
We'll see it in another 6 months.
But
wow, this is going to be insane.
Yeah.
So I got to say, I think John is favored here, but we did see that Brad found a way to win game 2. Maybe he's got some sideboard tech that we haven't figured out yet. We're going to find out in just a moment as Brad Nelson is going to find out if he can make the finals here in Atlantic City to face Josh Utter-Leighton and a really similar deck. I don't know if they're on exactly the same deck, but basically the same deck that John's on here.
Yeah, let me see.
So we're either going to see the mirror or we're going to see pedal to the metal.
It's a difference in sideboards. That much is for certain. I think there's a couple of number differences. So definitely not an exact 60 or 75 card mirror matchup. If we do see the mirror matchup in the final, there is certainly going to be some interesting things that happen during the sideboarding phase because John has 3 copies of Nearheath Pilgrim in his sideboard that look to me at least to break this mirror match wide open. All right.
Judge? That's binding, right? Yeah, that's binding.
So let's see how this ends up playing out. I'm really interested to see how that last match played out. I'm definitely going to have to go back and check the written coverage to figure out how that worked. Players are drawing their opening hands. See a pair of Huntmasters, an Is It Staticaster, a Farseek, and a Tragic Slip from Nelson. He's given, I would imagine, the crossed fingers off camera. You can't see him.
He's doing some type of ritual here.
Yeah, definitely crossed fingers.
Right, and it looks like it worked.
We're Brad Nelson, a bad person. This is where he starts spamming 555555555 into the chat. But
thankfully for everybody watching and us, Brad's not.
Yeah, but we have already discussed Stern's deck mulligans very well. So
he needs a few key pieces. He needs something preferably with hexproof and a few auras, and he can put a huge clock down. Brad Nelson's deck definitely takes its time to actually get to the winning part of the match.
Certainly,
or
yeah.
of the game.
And Stern also, I mean, like, Stern has a lot more flexibility of what he can mulligan in this match also. So he's looking for certain cards. Like, against Nelson's deck, you need your hexproof guys. So it's possible he mulligans a hand that's perfectly reasonable, yet the main business creature is a non-hexproof creature and just decides it's not worth the risk.
For pro points, too. Obviously. We can play for pro points? No, we can't? Oh, then I don't want to do that. Okay.
Would have been great if you could get like locked in.
Looking at John Stern's sideboard, I'm not 100% positive what actually comes in out of it against this Brad Nelson's deck. And he's got some Loxodon Smiters, other big beaters. He's got Rootborn defenses. I mean, Nevermore might actually come in because he might need that. Rest in Peace isn't terrible, but it's not great either.
We see Brad has assumed the luck position again here.
Okay.
All right. John Stern's going to lead off with a tapped Temple Garden. Not going to take any damage, and Brad Nelson has a tapped land. It's a Rootbound Craig for himself. Now, let's see what John has for his turn 2 here.
Nelson's draw for his turn was a Nightshade Peddler, so combined with the Staticaster he has in his hand, he has the combo available to him.
Now, it's going to be good against a few of the cards that John has, but some of them not. I mean, there's only so many viable hexproof options available in Standard.
Yeah.
So it's not like John automatically has Invisible Stalkers or Geist of St. Traps in his deck. He can also have Silverblade Paladins, which are going to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
A bunch of different options.
I definitely think that those considerations weigh heavily on John when he's actually making the decision to keep or mulligan his hand.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. All right. We're in the semis here in Atlantic City. This is a huge Game 3. The winner of this is going to advance to the finals to play against Josh Utterlayton.
Nelson's going to start next turn making Huntmaster of the Fells, which I'm pretty sure are a major component of how he, like the cards he needs to win this match.
To actually finish a game to win it. Yeah, his deck doesn't have a lot of big punch. You know, the last time that we saw Brad, he was playing a Craterhoof Behemoth deck.
Yeah.
And that had a huge punch. This deck is much different than that.
No, this is love taps.
Yeah. All right, so it looks like John's deciding what he wants to put on it.
Cleric?
Cleric, so it looks like we're going to be seeing a Geist of St. Trapt, and there it is. That's stage 1.
Step 1.
And let's see what Brad Nelson can come up with on his turn here. So he's got a bunch of cards that don't do anything against the Geist of St. Trapt. He's got a Tragic Slip. He's got the Staticaster combo. None of those do anything. They can block it on the ground, but that's usually not where the Geist of St. Trapt usually is coming in with First Strike or flying.
Am I correct in reading his hand that he doesn't have a 4th land? He has the Farseek, but he doesn't have a 4th land, so he can't actually start playing those
Huntmasters to start turning guys sideways. Yeah, I think you're right. Which means that Brad has to decide between putting a Nightshade Peddler, which isn't going to do anything on this board, or a Farseek. He could also just hold back for Staticaster, but that doesn't really do much here either. So it looks like he's just going to have to Farseek, right?
I think so, yeah. I mean, the other play I think he might possibly be considering is
pretty unhappy about it, as you can see by his body language, but he is indeed just going to play a Farseek here.
And he might have been able to, if John doesn't have specifically Ethereal Armor, play out the Nightshade Peddler there, and then during an attack, flash in is it Staticaster and just block with the Nightshade Peddler to kill off the Geist.
The next 2 turns.
Exactly.
For him to do that, and that's just asking a lot that John doesn't have either Ethereal Armor or Spectral Flight.
Exactly.
That's too risky. So he's just going to go ahead and play out the Farseek here. And you see he's got his hands in his head as he watches John's turn. What is John going to play? He's got a Silverblade Paladin, I believe, in his hand now.
The insane thing
which would enable an incredibly fast clock. Although Brad Nelson is still at 20, he's going to have some life gain. He might be able to get a turn back out of the deal, but it looks like he's going to start with, does he? An Abundant Growth.
That's 6.
Draws his card for the turn. Brad says he has 6 cards. Looks like he's drawn a Hollowed Fountain here.
Alt undo.
That's what I see.
All right,
too.
so what is John going to do this turn? You can see that Brad is nervously rubbing his hands together as he awaits his fate. He knows that if he gets enough time, he can start committing a bunch of stuff to the board. That is a Spectral Flight. It is indeed.
That's a problem for Brad.
That's a big problem as it represents a 3-turn clock, 8 damage coming in the air right now. And it's going to drop Brad down to 12. Another land for John Stern before he ships a turn back. I believe that's another Nightshade Peddler for...
I thought it was a Tracker's Instinct.
Oh, yeah, you're right. It's a Tracker's Instinct. For Brad, he is going to play a Huntmaster of the Fells. That's going to put him back up to 14 life. If he plays 2 more Huntmaster of the Fells, he can get a turn back. But right now, he's going to take 8 and 8, even if he plays another Huntmaster of the Fells.
Yeah.
This is going to be an Ethereal Armor, although it's not super.
That's it.
There it is, and John Stern advances to the finals as Brad Nelson just has no way to deal with a hexproof threat that has flying and first strike and can do all of those things. So bitter disappointment for Brad Nelson, but a really solid finish for him this weekend as he makes it all the way to the semis with his deck, and he's got to be happy with another top 8 at a professional level event.
Oh, certainly. I mean, there wasn't much he could do. Like, the 2 Bant Auras decks were just bad matchups for him, but he played well against the field. Like, his deck was not a bad choice in the slightest for the field today.
Right.
Just Yeah, his deck doesn't have much he can do right there. So being able to make it all the way to the semis at this tournament here, he would have loved to win. Everyone would love to win. Hates finishing top 4 as a
Absolutely.
consolation, but at the same time, like anybody who'd been questioning like his commitment or like his like whether or not like he was still able to play at those top levels. I mean, this is another perfect example. Like
And I don't know that he was qualified for San Diego yet. Was he?
I don't